The Billionaire's Betrayal, a Woman's Fiery Rebirth. Warning: this story contains themes of betrayal and revenge that may be intense for some viewers. But if you are ready for a tale of ultimate triumph, then keep watching. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more unbelievable true stories. The scent of him still clung to the polished mahogany desk. Lillian traced the smooth surface where her father once commanded, the crushing weight of a new, terrifying reality settling onto her shoulders. It had been barely a fortnight since the funeral, and already she was expected to step into the colossal shoes of the empire he'd painstakingly built over a lifetime. "Miss Lillian?" Mark's voice, steady and familiar, pulled her back. "I have those reports you requested." She watched her father's loyal assistant approach, a towering stack of documents in his arms. Mark, always the family's steadfast right hand, had been a comforting presence through every milestone she could recall. "Thank you, Mark. I don't even know where to begin." Lillian sighed, a wave of helplessness washing over her. Mark offered a gentle smile, his warm brown eyes radiating a quiet confidence. "I can help you with that. Your father taught me everything about this company, and I promised him I'd look after you." Days blurred into weeks, and Mark proved indispensable. He was a constant patient guide, unraveling the intricate complexities of the business, making Lillian feel a little less adrift in a corporate world that seemed vast and intimidating. "You're incredible. You know that?" she murmured one late night, poring over contracts. "I don't know what I'd do without you here." The first kiss, gentle and spontaneous, happened that very night. 6 months later, a small, elegant wedding. Exactly what Lillian had always dreamed of. But the honeymoon barely ended before the subtle shifts began. It started with casual remarks over breakfast. "Perhaps skip the toast today, darling. Eating for two, are we?" A critical glance at her plate. Then came the professional slights, disguised as concern. "Let me handle this meeting, sweetheart. You look tired." Within months, Lillian found herself systematically edged out of key company decisions. Mark gradually seized control, always with a plausible excuse, always subtly chipping away at her self-worth. Lillian gazed at her father's framed photo on the desk, struggling to decipher the financial reports before her. Nearly a year since his passing, 6 months into her marriage with Mark, everything had irrevocably changed. "Lillian, are you still not done with these reports?" Mark strode into her office without knocking, his voice laced with impatience. "I'm almost there. Just need to cross-reference some data that doesn't—" "Leave it." He snatched the papers from her hand. "You clearly aren't grasping any of this." Meetings began without her. Mark scheduled crucial appointments at times he knew she'd be unavailable. When questioned, a ready excuse was always on his lips. During a lunch with investors, Lillian attempted to voice an opinion on a new acquisition. "Darling," Mark interrupted smoothly, in front of everyone. "Why don't you get us more water? I'll handle this part." The sympathetic glances of the other executives made her want to vanish. Slowly, her office was stripped bare, her appointments canceled, her access to vital documents blocked. "It's for the good of the company," Mark would justify. "You clearly lack the capacity to manage all this." One afternoon, entering the boardroom unannounced, she found Mark signing documents she'd never seen. "What is this?" "Nothing you need to concern yourself with," he replied dryly. "In fact, I think it's best you work from home for a while. Your presence is hindering progress." Social events became a nightmare. Mark made a point of publicly correcting her, of highlighting her shortcomings in front of everyone. At a charity gala, she overheard him casually remarking to other moguls, "It's complicated, you know." Married her thinking she'd inherited her father's business acumen, but the final blow came during the company's annual holiday party. Lillian discovered Mark had sold a significant portion of her inherited shares without her knowledge. "How could you do this? This company is ours." "Yours?" He laughed, loud enough to draw the attention of nearby guests. "You can barely sign your own name. Look at you, a fat, hideous whale. Who would want you, you useless woman?" Lillian's face burned. Tears welled. "I want a divorce," he continued, uncaring of who heard. "I've already spoken with the lawyers. You're clearly unfit to manage anything." The following week, Lillian discovered Mark had sold not just the company, but also the family estate she'd inherited. The locks were changed, her cards blocked. "Your personal effects are in a box at the concierge," his lawyer informed her by phone. "The rest is company property." That night, alone in a cheap hotel room, Lillian stared at the few photos and documents she'd salvaged. 28 years old, homeless, jobless, penniless. The empire her father built, now in the hands of the man who promised to protect her. Her phone rang. It was Brenda, an executive who'd always shown an unsettling interest in Mark. "Sweetheart, don't take it personally. Mark only did what any shrewd businessman would do. You truly weren't up to par." Lillian hung up, tossing the phone onto the bed. The tears finally came, a torrent of grief and the crushing realization that she had lost everything to a man who never truly loved her. The hotel room reeked of stale air. Lillian sat on the narrow bed, staring at the meager belongings she'd salvaged. Her phone vibrated incessantly. Creditors, people she'd once considered friends, all demanding explanations she didn't have. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we can only keep you for 2 more days," the receptionist informed her that morning. "Your card was declined for the extension." Lillian nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Her fingers trembled as she dialed yet another number on her contact list. "Chloe, it's Lillian." "Oh, Lily, look, now isn't a good time. You understand, right? With this whole situation." Click. Another door slammed shut. At the hotel breakfast, Brenda appeared uninvited, her malicious smile matching her impeccable designer suit. "Came to see how our former CEO is doing." Brenda settled into the chair opposite Lillian, adjusting her perfectly styled hair. "Mark's a bit concerned you might do something inconvenient." "Concerned?" Lillian scoffed. "He left me with nothing." "Darling, be realistic. What did you expect? You were never his match. Look at you." Brenda's eyes raked over Lillian. "Perhaps this is a sign to get that bariatric surgery you so desperately need." Lillian abruptly stood, knocking over her coffee cup. Heads turned, whispers spread. She could already imagine the cruel comments circulating through the corporate WhatsApp groups. After wandering aimlessly through the city, she found a bench in Central Park. It was ironic how just weeks ago she frequented the city's finest restaurants, and now she barely had enough for a cheap snack. "Lillian?" A voice with an unfamiliar accent made her look up. A tall man, with striking East Asian features and an impeccably tailored suit, stood before her. His eyes, the same she remembered from adolescence, still held that unique kindness. "Dr. Kenji?" She blinked, recalling the shy boy who always defended her in international school. Here he was, the millionaire CEO of one of Japan's largest tech conglomerates. "I can't believe it." He sat beside her on the park bench, completely disregarding his expensive suit. "I tried to reach out when I heard about your father, but so much has changed since then." Lillian's voice caught in her throat. At a secluded cafe downtown, Lillian recounted everything. With each word, she saw Kenji's jaw clench. He watched her with a familiar intensity, the same way he used to look at her in school when she was bullied for her weight. "You were always strong, Lillian," he said softly, "even when you didn't realize it." "Strong? Look at me." "I've lost everything." "No." He touched her hand across the table, a gesture that made her heart flutter. You only lost what was material. Your essence? That remains untouched. Kenji hesitated for a moment, as if weighing his next words. You know, I've always regretted not saying certain things before I went back to Japan, he began, his eyes fixed on hers. Not saying how special you were to me, how special you still are. Lillian felt her face burn. She remembered the times she caught him looking at her in the library, the small gestures of affection she hadn't understood back then. Come with me to Tokyo, he proposed. My penthouse in Shibuya has an entire empty wing. You can start fresh there, away from all these toxic people. Kenji, I can't accept. Yes, you can. He squeezed her hand gently. Consider it an investment. The girl I knew had dreams too big to end like this. That night, in her hotel room, Lillian reread the first-class ticket Kenji had bought. Her phone rang. It was Brenda. Heard you're begging for help around the city. How pathetic. Lillian hung up and looked out the window. In 3 days, she'd be halfway across the world. The idea that once terrified her now seemed like her only salvation. At the airport, Kenji held her passport, a gentle smile on his face. Ready? No, she answered honestly. But I have to do this. Already on the plane, as the lights of New York City faded beneath the clouds, Lillian made a silent promise to herself. She would never be humiliated again. She would never allow anyone to diminish her worth. Kenji, seated beside her, watched her with that same adoring gaze from adolescence. She realized that perhaps, just perhaps, the universe was giving her a second chance. When the plane touched down in Tokyo, the sun was rising on the horizon. Lillian watched the futuristic city sprawl before her, its skyscrapers gleaming under the golden morning light. Welcome to your new life, Kenji whispered. Kenji's car glided silently through the streets of Tokyo. Lillian watched, mesmerized, as the city lights blurred outside the tinted window. Everything felt so different, so far removed from the life she'd left behind. I know you must be scared. Kenji broke the silence, his voice soft. But I promise, you're not alone in this. The car stopped in front of a breathtaking mansion in Shibuya. The modern structure rose imposingly, with vast glass windows and a meticulously manicured garden. This is... Lillian searched for words. Your new home, he finished, opening the door for her. For as long as you need. A housekeeper greeted them with a respectful bow. Kenji exchanged a few words with her in Japanese. She nodded and smiled gently at Lillian. Mrs. Tanaka has prepared your room in the East Wing, he explained. It has an incredible view of the cherry blossom garden. As they ascended the stairs, Lillian noticed the photos on the walls. Among family portraits and corporate events, one made her pause. It was an old photo from school. A teenage Lillian smiled shyly beside a young Kenji. You kept this? She asked, surprised. He stopped beside her, his eyes fixed on the photograph. I keep all important things. The room was spacious and elegant, decorated in soft tones of beige and blue. A large window offered a panoramic view of the garden, exactly as he'd described. Tomorrow we can start organizing your documents, Kenji said, standing at the door. And after that, well, your future is yours to build. Before leaving, he hesitated. Lillian, I want you to know I always believed in you. Even when we were young, even when everyone said you were different, I always saw your strength. His words lingered in the air even after he left. Lillian sat on the soft bed, letting the tears finally fall. Not from sadness, but from relief, from gratitude. Her phone vibrated one last time. It was a message from Mark. Hope you're happy in your exile. No one here misses you. Lillian observed the city of Tokyo from her room in Kenji's mansion. A week had passed since her arrival, and she still felt displaced in this new world. A soft knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. It was Kenji, with his usual gentle smile. "How are you feeling?" he asked, entering the room. Entering, Lillian sighed, turning to face him. "Honestly, lost. Grateful for everything you're doing, but lost?" Kenji approached, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "It's understandable. You've been through a lot. But I want you to know you don't need to change, Lillian. You were always perfect just the way you are." "No, Kenji, I wasn't perfect. I was weak, naive. I was humiliated and discarded, as if I was worthless." She paused, taking a deep breath. "And that's why I need your help. Not just to get back on my feet, but to get revenge." Kenji stared at her, surprised. "Revenge? Lillian, you don't need to—" "Yes, I do." She interrupted him, her voice trembling with emotion. "I want you to help me completely transform, physically and mentally. I want Mark and everyone who belittled me to feel every humiliation they put me through." "Are you sure about this?" Kenji asked, concern evident in his voice. "Revenge can be a dangerous path. You don't need to prove anything to anyone." Lillian walked to the window again, watching the bustling city outside. "It's not just about proving something. It's about justice, about reclaiming what is rightfully mine. And I need your help, Kenji. Please." He watched her for long seconds, as if fighting an internal battle. Finally, he let out a resigned sigh. "All right," he said. "I'll help you. But promise me you won't lose yourself in this process, that you won't let revenge consume the wonderful person you are." Lillian turned, facing him with a mix of gratitude and determination. "I promise. And thank you, Kenji, for everything." "So where do we start?" Kenji asked, surrendering to her resolve. "With everything. I want a complete transformation. Physical, mental, professional. I want to learn everything about business, how to carry myself, how to defend myself. I want that when I return to the US, no one recognizes me." Kenji nodded, already mentally planning. "I'll assemble a team, the best professionals in each field. But Lillian, this won't be easy." "It doesn't matter," she said, her voice full of conviction. "I'm ready for any challenge." The mansion's private gym was empty at 5 in the morning. Lillian watched her reflection in the mirrored wall as her personal trainer, Min Ji, adjusted her posture on the treadmill. "5 more minutes, Lillian," the trainer encouraged in her careful English. "You're making excellent progress." 2 weeks had passed since her arrival in Tokyo. Kenji had assembled a full team for her transformation. Personal trainers, a nutritionist, a Japanese language tutor, and a business consultant. "Your dedication is impressive," Kenji commented during breakfast, watching her carefully select her portions. "But you don't need to skip meals." "I'm not skipping," she smiled, taking a bowl of oatmeal. "Dr. Sato developed a specific meal plan for me. Mornings were dedicated to workouts and Japanese lessons. In the afternoons, Lillian immersed herself in business studies with Mr. Takahashi. The key isn't just understanding numbers, Mr. Takahashi explained, his glasses reflecting the office light. It's understanding the people behind them. During one of these lessons, Kenji quietly entered the library. "How is she doing?" he asked Mr. Takahashi in English. "Impressive," the consultant replied. "She has a natural talent for strategy that your father also possessed." Lillian pretended not to hear, but her heart quickened. It was the first time anyone had positively compared her to her father. Evenings were reserved for self-defense classes. Sensei Tanaka, a former military instructor, spared no effort. "Your strength isn't just in your muscles," he'd say, helping her up after a fall. "It's in your mind." The mirror began to show a different person. It wasn't just the weight that was shedding. It was as if every drop of sweat carried away a bit of the old Lillian. 2 years passed since that decisive conversation with Kenji. Time had transformed Lillian in ways she never imagined possible. Standing before the mirror in her walk-in closet, Lillian barely recognized the woman staring back. Her body, once filled with curves that made her feel insecure, now displayed toned muscles. Her hair, once lifeless, now cascaded in silky waves over her shoulders. Even her posture had changed. She stood tall, emanating a confidence that was once alien to her. Incredible, isn't it? Kenji's voice startled her from her thoughts. He stood by the door, watching her with admiration. Sometimes even I don't believe it, Lillian replied, turning to him. But it's not just the exterior that changed. Kenji nodded, well aware of the internal transformation she had undergone. Days and nights of intense study, physical and mental training, had forged a new woman. "The reports you asked for have arrived," he said, handing her a folder. Lillian opened the folder immediately, her eyes scanning the numbers with an ability acquired after countless hours of study. A subtle smile formed on her lips. "Mark is sinking the company," she murmured, more to herself than to Kenji. "The debts are piling up. Investors are losing confidence." "And what do you intend to do with this information?" Kenji asked, though he already knew the answer. Lillian closed the folder, her eyes gleaming with determination and something darker, the desire for revenge she had harbored for 2 years. "It's time to go back to the U.S., she declared. "It's time for Mark to meet the new Victoria." Kenji raised an eyebrow. "Victoria? My new name," she explained. "Lillian died that night Mark humiliated me. Now I am Victoria, and I will live up to the name." He watched her for a long moment, as if trying to memorize every detail of her face. "Are you sure you're ready?" Victoria approached, placing a hand on Kenji's shoulder. "More than ever. I spent 2 years preparing for this moment. I've studied every detail of the company. I know its weaknesses. I know exactly where to strike." "And what about your heart?" Kenji asked softly. "Is it ready too?" For a brief instant, Victoria hesitated, but soon her eyes hardened again. "My heart is shielded, Kenji. Mark and all the others who belittled me will meet a new woman, one who will not be shaken by anything or anyone." Kenji nodded. He knew he couldn't convince her otherwise. "So, when do we leave?" "We leave?" Victoria asked. "It's undeliberate. You didn't think I'd let you face this alone, did you?" He smiled, that gentle smile that always warmed her heart, even on the hardest days. "Thank you, Kenji, for everything." The Los Angeles airport buzzed with activity. Victoria, formerly known as Lillian, adjusted her sunglasses as she observed the crowd. Beside her, Kenji discreetly held her hand, offering silent support. "Ready?" he asked softly. Victoria nodded, her posture erect and confident. More than ever, the taxi took them to the luxury hotel where they would be staying. Victoria watched the city that was once her home through the window, now seeming strangely alien. In the hotel room, she opened her laptop, reviewing the meticulously planned strategy one last time. "Remember," Kenji said, sitting beside her. "You don't have to do this if you don't want to." Victoria smiled, but it was a cold, calculated smile. "I want to, and I will." The next morning, Victoria was impeccable in her Chanel suit, her Louboutin heels echoing through the corridors of the company that was once hers. Her transformation was so complete that no one recognized her. "Good morning," she said to the receptionist, her accent subtly changed after 2 years in Japan. "I have an interview with Mr. Mark Davis." Minutes later, she was sitting in the waiting room, her heart pounding, but her face a mask of serenity. The door opened, and there he was. Mark, the man who had destroyed her life. "Miss," Mark asked, extending his hand. "Stone, Victoria Stone," she replied, her handshake firm and professional. Mark's office was exactly as she remembered, though now she noticed subtle signs of decay, a coffee stain on the desk, disorganized papers. "So, Miss Stone, "Why do you think you'd be suitable for the position of my personal assistant?" Mark asked, his eyes shamelessly raking over Victoria's body. She suppressed a shiver of disgust. "I have extensive experience in business management in Japan. I believe my international perspective would be a valuable asset to your company." Mark smiled, clearly impressed. "And why did you leave Japan?" "I sought new challenges," Victoria answered smoothly. "And I heard your company is facing some interesting obstacles." Mark's smile faltered for a second. "Well, all businesses have their ups and downs." The interview continued, with Victoria skillfully demonstrating her knowledge and competence. Mark seemed increasingly interested, both professionally and personally. "Well, Miss Stone, I must say I'm impressed," he concluded. "The position is yours if you want it." Victoria smiled, a flicker of triumph in her eyes. "It will be a pleasure working with you, Mr. Davis." As she left the office, Victoria encountered Brenda in the hallway. The woman who now occupied her old place stared at her with a mix of curiosity and hostility. "Who are you?" Brenda asked sharply. "The new assistant to Mr. Davis," Victoria replied with a polite smile. "Victoria Stone." Brenda scrutinized her from head to toe, her displeasure evident. We'll see for how long." Back at the hotel, Victoria found Kenji anxious for news. "How was it?" he asked as soon as she entered the room. Victoria smiled, removing her heels. "Perfect. Mark has no idea who I am. And the best part? He hired me." Kenji watched her with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Are you really ready for this? To see him every day? To pretend you don't know him?" "I'm ready for anything," Victoria replied, her voice firm. "This is just the first step. Soon, Mark will understand the true meaning of the word loss." That night, as she prepared for bed, Victoria looked at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman staring back was strong, determined, and relentless. There were no more traces of the insecure, heartbroken Lillian. "Tomorrow," she whispered to herself, "the game truly begins." Across the room, Kenji watched her silently, his heart torn between the love he felt for her and the fear of what this revenge might cost them both. Victoria arrived early at the office on her first day. Dressed in elegant attire and high heels, she walked confidently to her new desk, close to Mark's office. Brenda appeared shortly after, eyeing Victoria with suspicion. "So, you're the new assistant," she said, not hiding her dislike. "Victoria Stone," she replied, offering her hand. Brenda pretended not to see it. "Just a warning," Brenda said, leaning close. "Don't try anything clever around here. This is my place." Victoria merely smiled, unfazed. "I'm just here to work, Mrs. Davis." In the following weeks, Victoria dedicated herself to learning everything about the company. She was always the first to arrive and the last to leave, paying close attention to hushed conversations and papers left on desks. Mark began to notice her effort. "Victoria, these reports are excellent," he praised one day, clearly impressed. "Thank you, Mr. Davis. I'm just doing my best to help the company during this difficult time," she replied, meeting his eyes for a moment longer than necessary. Mark looked uncomfortable, a bit confused. "Well, keep it up. We need people like you here." Brenda watched all this unfold and grew increasingly irritated. During a dinner at home, she couldn't take it anymore. "Why are you paying so much attention to that new assistant?" she demanded angrily. Mark frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb, Mark. I see the way you look at her here. You're exaggerating," Mark replied. But he didn't sound very convinced. While the couple argued, Victoria was at the office, working late. With access to the company's computers, she began to gather information about Mark's suspicious dealings. In her apartment, she reviewed the documents she had copied. "He's riddled with debt," she thought aloud, "and these contracts are clearly illegal." The next day, Victoria brought a folder of hand-picked papers to the office. During a meeting with investors, she accidentally dropped the folder near one of the key shareholders. The curious man glanced at the papers. His face instantly paled. "Mr. Davis," he called out, his voice tense. "Can we speak privately?" Mark, confused, agreed. Victoria watched the two men leave the room, feigning concern. Later, at home, Victoria allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. The first part of her plan had worked. Doubt had been planted. "Soon, Mark," she said, looking in the mirror. "You'll know what it's like to lose everything." In the following weeks, Victoria became indispensable to the company. Her work impressed everyone, especially Mark. "I don't know how we managed before you arrived," Mark said one day, smiling at her. Victoria smiled back, but her mind was elsewhere. During extra hours, she meticulously researched files and emails, uncovering several financial and legal schemes. At an investor meeting, Victoria carefully questioned certain transactions. "Mr. Davis, regarding that contract with Company X, shouldn't we review the terms?" The main investor looked concerned and requested more information. Mark became visibly nervous. After the meeting, Mark called Victoria into his office. "Victoria, we need to be careful what we say in meetings," he said, tense. She feigned surprise. "Sorry, Mr. Davis, I just wanted to help." Mark relaxed a bit. "I know, you've been great." At a company party, a drunken Brenda confronted Victoria. "You think you can just waltz in here and take my place?" she shouted, spilling champagne on Victoria's blouse. Everyone fell silent. Victoria, feigning tears, ran out. Mark followed her. "Victoria, I'm so sorry for what my wife did," he said, touching her arm. She wiped away her tears. "It's okay, Mr. Davis, I understand." Mark looked at her with admiration. "You're incredible, you know that." In the following days, Victoria noticed Mark looking at her frequently. She began to wear tighter clothing and stand closer to him when showing documents. At a company happy hour, Victoria chatted animatedly with a colleague. Mark, across the bar, couldn't stop staring at her, looking bothered. "Mr. Davis, is everything all right?" Victoria asked, approaching him. "Of course," he replied dryly. "I just think you should be careful with certain friendships at work." Victoria hid a smile. Her plan was working. At home, Mark and Brenda argued constantly. "You spend more time with that assistant than you do with me," Brenda yelled. "At least she doesn't embarrass me in front of others," Mark retorted. Victoria heard about these arguments and knew she was on the right track. Each day, Mark trusted her more, and his wife less. Soon, Victoria thought, looking at herself in the mirror, everything he built will crumble, and I'll be there to watch. Victoria was sitting at her desk, reviewing some files, when something caught her eye. She squinted, rereading the document several times to make sure of what she was seeing. "No, it can't be," she murmured to herself. It was an email detailing a complex money laundering scheme with Mark at the center of it all. Victoria felt her heart quicken. This was much bigger than she expected. In the following days, she spent every free moment gathering more evidence. She discreetly copied documents, made coded notes, and stored everything on a hidden USB drive in her purse. During a visit to the office, Brenda saw the glances Mark was casting at Victoria. She wasn't foolish. She noticed the way he always found an excuse to stay late at the office. One night, when Mark arrived home, Brenda was waiting in the living room, a half-empty wine bottle beside her. "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice laced with accusation. Mark sighed, tired. "Working, Brenda. As always. With her." Brenda stood up, swaying slightly. "With that hussy?" "Don't talk about Victoria like that," Mark snapped, his voice rising. She's a competent professional. Oh, now it's Victoria, Brenda screamed. Are you sleeping with her, aren't you? The argument quickly escalated. Shouts echoed through the house, and the neighbors heard everything. The next day, employees whispered in the hallways. Victoria feigned surprise at the rumors. I heard Mrs. Davis threw a vase at him, a secretary whispered. Victoria shook her head, feigning concern. How terrible. I hope this doesn't affect the company. Meanwhile, she continued her plan. At a lunch with key investors, Victoria subtly planted doubts about Mark's management. Have you noticed any irregularities in the latest reports? She asked innocently. The investors exchanged worried glances. The seed of doubt was planted. Days later, an important contract was about to be signed. Victoria, knowing the importance of the deal, made a few alterations to the final document. When the contract was signed and the inconsistencies came to light, Mark was caught off guard. How could this happen? He yelled in an emergency meeting. Victoria watched silently as Mark tried to explain himself to the furious investors. She could see control slipping through his fingers. That night, Mark called her into his office. He looked defeated, his shoulders slumped. Victoria, I don't know what to do, he admitted, running a hand through his hair. Everything is falling apart. She approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. Mr. Davis, Mark, I'm here to help. You can count on me. Mark looked at her, his eyes full of vulnerability. I'm so afraid of losing everything, Victoria. Everything I built. You won't lose it, she lied, her voice soft. We'll fix this together. While comforting Mark, Victoria could barely contain her satisfaction. Each of his tears was a victory for her. Each admission of fear a step closer to her revenge. It's going to be okay, she whispered, hugging him. But in her mind, Victoria was already planning the next blow. Mark's ruin was just beginning, and she was savoring every second. That night, in her apartment, Victoria reviewed all the evidence she had collected. Photos, emails, documents, everything pointed to Mark's corruption. Soon, very soon, she told herself, a cold smile on her lips. You'll understand what it's like to lose everything, Mark. Just like I did. Her phone rang. It was Kenji. How are things? He asked, concern in his voice. Exactly as we planned, Victoria replied. Mark is crumbling, and I'm here to watch every moment. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Victoria, are you sure this will bring you peace? For a moment, Victoria hesitated. But then, the image of Mark humiliating her, taking everything from her, came back with full force. Peace? No, Kenji, this will bring me justice. Brenda was restless. Something about Victoria didn't add up. She picked up the phone and called an old friend. Carl, I need you to investigate someone for me, she said, her voice low. Meanwhile, Victoria was at the office, organizing some files, when she found something that made her heart pound. These were emails between Mark and several women, filled with intimate messages and secret encounters. So this is how you play, Mark? She murmured, copying everything to her USB drive. Brenda was at home, reviewing some emails, when a notification appeared on her screen. Sender, unknown. She hesitated for a moment before opening it. Dear Mrs. Davis, I think you should see this. With trembling hands, Brenda clicked on the attachment. Her heart stopped when the images loaded. They were photos of Mark, her husband, in compromising situations with several different women. No, it can't be, she murmured, feeling the blood drain from her face. At that moment, the front door opened. Mark entered, looking tired after a long day at the office. Hi, honey, he said distractedly, but stopped when he saw the expression on Brenda's face. What's wrong? Brenda turned the laptop towards him, her voice trembling with rage. "Care to explain this, Mark?" Mark's eyes widened in shock, then panic. "Brenda, I can explain?" "Explain what?" Brenda yelled, standing up abruptly. "That you've been sleeping with half the city?" Mark tried to approach, but Brenda recoiled. "Who sent you this?" he asked, his voice a mixture of fear and anger. "Does it matter?" Brenda retorted, tears starting to fall. "What matters is that it's true, isn't it?" Mark's silence was answer enough. "You bastard!" Brenda grabbed the nearest object, a vase, and hurled it at him. Mark narrowly dodged it. "Brenda, please, let's talk about this," he pleaded, but Brenda was already grabbing her keys. "Talk? It's over, Mark. It's over." She slammed the door shut, leaving Mark alone with his guilt and confusion. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Victoria smiled at her computer, satisfied that her plan had worked. The anonymous email she had sent to Brenda was just the beginning. Mark's ruin was underway, and she couldn't wait to see the rest unfold. In the following days, Brenda was determined to expose Victoria. She arranged a meeting with the shareholders, promising to reveal the truth about the new assistant. "Gentlemen, this woman is not who she says she is," Brenda began, her voice trembling. "She is manipulating all of you, especially my husband." The shareholders exchanged confused glances. Mark looked furious. "Brenda, are you drunk again?" he asked, his voice cutting. Victoria remained calm. "Mrs. Davis, I understand you're going through a difficult time, but these accusations are unfounded." Brenda was escorted out, leaving everyone whispering about her strange behavior. As Mark's marriage crumbled, Victoria continued her plan. She subtly altered some numbers in an important report, leading Mark to make a disastrous decision that cost the company millions. "I don't understand how this happened," Mark said, running his hands through his hair in despair. Victoria comforted him, hiding her smile of satisfaction. One day, Kenji appeared unexpectedly at the office. "Kenji, what are you doing here?" Victoria asked, genuinely surprised. "I came to see how you are," he replied, his eyes full of concern. "Victoria, are you sure you want to continue with this?" She pulled him aside. "I'm so close, Kenji. I can't stop now." He held her hands. "I just don't want you to lose yourself in this revenge." Victoria felt a pang in her chest, but pushed the feeling away. "I won't, I promise." Meanwhile, Mark began to piece things together. Something about Victoria seemed familiar, but he couldn't grasp what it was. One night, he was going through some old files when he found a photo. His heart stopped. It was Lillian, years ago, smiling beside him. "It can't be," he murmured, comparing the photo with a recent image of Victoria on his phone. On the other side of the city, Brenda received a call from Carl. "I found something about your assistant," he said. "You won't believe it." Victoria, oblivious to all this, prepared her final move. She had all the evidence of Mark's illegal activities. Tomorrow, she would hand everything over to the police and the press. "It's over, Mark," she told herself, looking out her apartment window. "You're going to lose everything, just like I did." Mark entered his office, his head throbbing after another sleepless night. The scandal with Brenda had spread, and whispers followed him wherever he went. He collapsed into his chair, rubbing his tired eyes. The door opened softly. It was Victoria. "Good morning, Mr. Davis. I brought the reports you asked for," she said, her voice as calm as ever. Mark looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in months. Something about her. He picked up the framed photo on his desk, an old picture from a company party. His eyes widened. "It can't be," he murmured. Victoria noticed the change in his gaze. "Took you long enough to realize, didn't it, Mark?" she said, her voice now filled with bitterness. Mark stumbled, leaning on the desk. "How? Why?" Victoria laughed, a joyless sound. Why? Do you really need to ask? She approached, her eyes gleaming with years of suppressed rage. You humiliated me, discarded me like trash, took everything from me. Mark shook his head in disbelief. Lillian, I didn't know. Didn't know what? Victoria exploded. Didn't know I had feelings, that I was a human being. You betrayed me, stole from me, and still blamed me for everything. Memories flooded Mark. The shy girl he met, the promises he made, the dreams they shared, and how he destroyed it all. I'm so sorry, he whispered, his voice broken. Victoria stared at him, years of pain reflected in her eyes. Sorry isn't enough, Mark. Not after everything you did. At that moment, the door opened again. It was the head of security accompanied by 2 police officers. Mr. Davis, we need you to come with us, the officer said. Mark looked in a panic at Victoria. What's happening? She smiled, a cold, satisfied smile. Justice, Mark. Finally. As Mark was escorted out, his phone rang. It was Brenda. Mark, you idiot, she screamed. The police are after me too. What did you do? Brenda, Mark began. But she interrupted him. Forget it. I'm taking what's left and leaving the country. You're on your own. The call ended. Mark felt the world crumble around him. At the reception, reporters swarmed. Victoria watched from a distance as Mark was bombarded with questions about fraud, money laundering, and other accusations. One of the main investors passed by her, looking furious. It's over, Mark, he said. We're out. The company is yours to sink alone. Mark looked at Victoria, his eyes pleading. Please, Lillian, don't do this. She approached, her voice low so only he could hear. You had your chance, Mark. Now it's my turn. Victoria watched Mark being led away by the police and smiled. All her hard work had finally paid off. She felt happy and accomplished. Kenji appeared beside her. It's over, he said softly. Victoria nodded, a triumphant smile on her lips as she watched Mark get into the police car. Yes, it's finally over. And how do you feel? Kenji asked, curious. Victoria took a deep breath, savoring the moment. Fulfilled. He lost everything. His wife, his company, his freedom, exactly as I lost years ago. Kenji watched her intently. Did the revenge bring the satisfaction you expected? It brought more, Victoria replied, her eyes gleaming. Seeing Mark defeated, begging, was better than I could have imagined. She took one last look at the chaotic scene before her. Mark, the man she once loved and then hated with all her might, looked small and defeated in the back of the police car. Let's get out of here, she finally said, her tone confident and decisive. My work here is done. As they left, Victoria walked with her head held high, a satisfied smile on her face. The revenge was complete, and she felt powerful and fulfilled. The future, for the first time in years, seemed bright and full of possibilities. And now? Kenji asked as they got into the car. Victoria looked at him, her eyes shining with new energy. Now, Kenji, the world is mine, and I intend to enjoy it to the fullest. The car drove off, leaving behind the remnants of Mark's empire and carrying Victoria toward a future she finally felt she controlled. Her revenge was complete, and she was more than satisfied with the result. Victoria turned on the TV, just in time to see Mark being escorted out of the courthouse. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. Mark, once so confident, now looked small and defeated. Mark Davis, sentenced to 15 years in prison for fraud and money laundering, the reporter announced. Victoria turned off the TV, a mix of emotions in her chest. Revenge accomplished. The phone rang. It was Brenda. Victoria, or should I say Lillian? Brenda's voice trembled. Please, listen to me. Victoria sighed. What do you want, Brenda? I'm so sorry. For everything. I didn't know. It's too late for regrets, Victoria replied, hanging up. She walked to the window, observing the city. So much had changed. She had changed. The doorbell rang. It was Kenji. How are you? He asked, concern in his eyes. Victoria shrugged. Honestly, I don't know. They sat on the sofa, a comfortable silence between them. You know, Kenji began, my offer is still on the table. A new life in Japan. Victoria looked at him, surprised. You still want that? After everything I've done? Kenji took her hand. I want you, Lillian. The real you. Unexpected tears welled in her eyes. I don't know if I remember who the real me is. Then let's find out together, he smiled. The following week, Victoria began the process of selling the company. It felt strange to let go of something that once meant so much. Miss Stone, the papers are ready for your signature, said the lawyer. Victoria hesitated, the pen poised over the document. So many good and bad memories. Is everything all right? The lawyer asked. She took a deep breath and signed. It is now. With the money from the sale, Victoria did something that surprised even herself. She donated a significant portion to charity organizations. Why? Kenji asked, curious. Victoria smiled, a genuine smile she hadn't worn in a long time. Because someone needs to break the cycle of hurt. One day, Victoria received a phone call. It was from Mark, from prison. He was pleading to see her. Will you go? Kenji asked. Victoria remained silent for a long moment. I need to close this chapter for good. The prison was cold and impersonal. Mark seemed to have aged years in just a few months. Lillian, Victoria. Thank you for coming, he said, his voice hoarse. What do you want, Mark? Victoria asked, her voice neutral. Forgiveness, he whispered. I know I don't deserve it, but... Victoria interrupted him. I didn't come here to forgive you, Mark. I came to say goodbye. His eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry. For everything. Me too, Victoria replied. I'm sorry for both of us. She stood to leave. Victoria, Mark called. She paused without turning around. I hope you find the happiness I took from you. She didn't reply. She just left. Outside, Kenji was waiting for her. How was it? Victoria took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. It was liberating. Days later, Victoria was at the airport, a suitcase beside her. Ready? Kenji asked, offering his hand. Victoria looked back one last time, at the city that had been the stage for so much love, pain, and revenge. Ready? She replied, taking his hand. As they boarded, Victoria felt a mix of fear of the unknown, sadness for what was left behind, but mostly hope. Hope for a new beginning, for a life where she could simply be herself. Where do we go first? She asked Kenji. He smiled. Wherever you want. The world is ours. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the modern office in downtown Tokyo. Lillian, she had decided to go back to using her birth name, looked at the bustling city below. Miss Lillian, your meeting starts in 5 minutes, her assistant Mei Ling said, entering the room. Lillian smiled. Thank you, Mei Ling. I'll be there in a moment. 3 years had passed since she left the U.S. Now, at 30, Lillian was the CEO of her own technology company, respected in the competitive Japanese market. She walked confidently into the meeting room, where investors awaited her. The presentation was a success, as always. "Impressive, Miss Lillian," one of the investors said after the meeting. "Your business vision is remarkable." Lillian thanked him, feeling a wave of pride. This was her now. Strong, capable, respected. Back in her office, she saw a notification on her tablet. It was a news story about Mark. Former American businessman Mark Davis loses appeal, remains imprisoned. Lillian hesitated for a moment before closing the page. Mark was no longer relevant in her life. Her phone rang. It was Kenji. "Hi, love," she answered, smiling. "How was the meeting?" he asked. "Great. We got the investment." "I knew you would," Kenji said, pride in his voice. "How about we celebrate? Dinner out tonight?" "Perfect," Lillian replied. "See you at home." Later, at an elegant restaurant overlooking the Han River, Lillian and Kenji toasted to success. "Are you happy?" Kenji asked, his eyes full of affection. Lillian paused to reflect. "You know, I think so. Truly happy." Kenji smiled, suddenly looking nervous. "Lillian, there's something I want to ask you." He stood up and, to Lillian's surprise, knelt beside her. "Lillian, these last few years with you have been the best of my life. You are strong, courageous, and incredible. Will you marry me?" Lillian felt tears in her eyes, not of sadness or anger, as so often in the past, but of pure joy. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." In the following days, Lillian was overjoyed and busy planning the wedding. She smiled all the time, something that hadn't happened in a long time. One afternoon, she received an unexpected email. It was from an international business magazine, requesting an interview about her success story. "Will you accept?" Kenji asked when she told him. Lillian hesitated. "I don't know. Talk about the past?" Kenji took her hand. "Perhaps it's a chance to close that chapter for good, to show the world who you really are." She agreed, nervous but determined. On the day of the interview, Lillian was serene. The journalist, a friendly woman named Sarah, made her feel at ease. "Miss Lillian, your story is fascinating," Sarah began. "How did you get here?" Lillian took a deep breath. "My journey wasn't easy. There was betrayal, pain, a desire for revenge that almost consumed me." Sarah listened attentively as Lillian told her story, omitting nothing. "Do you regret it?" Sarah asked at the end. Lillian thought for a moment. "No. Every step, every mistake, every victory brought me here. I learned that true strength isn't in revenge, but in moving forward." When the interview was published, the response was overwhelming. Messages of support flooded Lillian's social media. "You are an example of overcoming," one said. "Your story gave me courage to start over," another read. Lillian read the messages, moved. Kenji hugged her from behind. "See, you've inspired so many people," he said softly. That night, standing on the balcony of her apartment, Lillian looked at the lights of Tokyo. She thought of everything she had been through, the pain, the struggle, the transformation. "I did it," she whispered to herself. "I won." Kenji joined her, intertwining his fingers with hers. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. Lillian smiled, a true and radiant smile. "The future, our future. Shall we go in?" Kenji suggested. "We have a wedding to plan." Lillian laughed, feeling light and happy. "Yes, let's. We have a whole life ahead of us." Hand in hand, they entered, ready to write the next chapter of their lives. Together. And what did you think of the story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you. Don't forget to hit that like button to support us and subscribe to the channel. See you next time. Emotional lesson from the story. This story is a powerful reminder that life can throw us the most devastating blows, but that does not define us. Lillian, in her pain and desire for revenge, discovered an extraordinary strength within herself. She turned her pain into a driving force to reinvent herself, not only physically, but also mentally and spiritually. However, the most profound lesson lies not in the act of revenge, but in the true liberation of letting go. Although Victoria achieved the justice she sought, it was only when Lillian came back to herself, learning to forgive, both those who had hurt her and herself, for taking the path of revenge, that she truly found happiness and peace. Kenji's genuine support and love helped her realize that the true value of life is not in bringing others down, but in the ability to rise up, rebuild, and find love and acceptance for yourself. Remember, sometimes the best way to heal is not revenge, but turning the pain into strength to create a better life for yourself. That is the true value we should seek in this life.